Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. So this week is the last part of chapter 3, literature review. So we are going to cover how to write an effective literature review. Literature review is an important part of research and is included in chapter 2 of the thesis. An effective literature review is important as it discusses and answers several questions. Effective literature review demonstrates that you know the field, justifies your research, provides the rationale for the research. How does your work differ from previous work? So meaning that effective literature review attempts to answer this question. Another question is, how does your work connect with previous work? It also provides a firm foundation to your research topic. The literature review should be organized around and directly related to a research problem you are trying to solve. Organize and synthesize the findings of previous researchers into a summary of what has and has not been achieved with regards to the research problem. Identify gap of knowledge or solution to the problem in the literature. Formulate questions that require further research. The literature review is not a list describing or summarizing one citation after another. Organize the literature review into sections that represent themes or subtopics or identify trends. So I'm going to show you two examples of sections in thesis chapter 2. So this is example number 1. Okay, the title of the research is M-Sign, a learning application for Malaysian Sign Language. Okay, in this chapter 2, based on this thesis, okay, there is part 2.1, which is deafness. Okay, because the research is concerned about how to learn sign language, and sign language is related to the deaf people. So the first part is that in this example, it covers on the deafness itself, meaning that the concept of deafness, and we have subtopics, which is the overview and the types of deafness. Okay, the next is 2.2, which covers about the deaf community, and the sub topics are the deaf population in Malaysia and education for the deaf in Malaysia. So you can see that for the 2.1, it covers in general, okay, universal, what is deaf and what are the types of deafness. Okay, now when it goes into 2.2, it covers specific the situation in Malaysia. Okay, and in this chapter, it the thesis provides statistics, okay, on the population, and in terms of education, schools in Malaysia conducting sign language and other things related to the deaf in Malaysia. Okay, the next section is 2.3. Okay, now this relates to the communication systems for the deaf. So meaning that when we talk systems, it's not computer systems, it's general on how the deaf communicate. So this is discussing about some of them, including sign language and finger spelling. Okay, the focus is on sign language and finger spelling, although in the overview there are other kinds of communication systems, but the focus is on these two because this will be included in the proposed learning application. Okay, there is also another section, 2.4, whereby this is on the learning sign language itself. there are overview on how the process of learning sign language and the sign language learning medium. This includes on books, videos, okay, internet, and so on. And 2.5 is on the learning application for sign language. This is where this particular thesis discusses on the existing applications and how they compare against each other based on several features. So you can see that the way that uh, the sections are organized in this chapter 2 is that it covers from the most basic, the general things related to the domain area, which is the deaf people, okay, and it zooms into the deaf community in Malaysia. Then it goes into how actually the deaf people communicate, what are the communication system. Then it furthers the argument or the discussion on in terms of the sign language itself. Now this is where the sign language is part of the title. And finally, it covers on the application of sign language itself, meaning that the existing applications in the market. Okay, this is, you see that how actually the discussion grows from the general to the very specific. Okay, another example, we have another thesis, which is a Belajar Lab, a virtual lab learning application for simulating chemistry experiments in the SPM syllabus. So this is the title. Okay, now there is an overview. Okay, overview, this is very general on what she's trying to discuss. Okay, the next section is 2.2. Okay, here she covers, or the thesis covers pure science experiments in the SPM syllabus, whereby within this section there is subsections, subtopics on the SPM syllabus itself, and also the medium for learning science experiments. Okay, this includes using books, videos, internet, and so on. Okay, the next section is on the integration of virtual lab into learning application. So within this section, okay, the thesis actually discusses on the concept of virtual lab itself and how the virtual lab can be integrated within learning applications. Okay, so this is based on existing situation across the world, not just in Malaysia. Okay, and the final section of this chapter 2 is a review on the existing virtual lab learning applications. So basically this is actually covering what's in the market, and actually the discussion also gives focus on what existing virtual lab learning applications are there in Malaysia. So basically you will see that how this particular literature review chapter 2 has been organized in this example, whereby it started with the domain area, which is actually the science SPM science syllabus. Okay, in terms of it covers on the process, the syllabus itself, the medium of how science can be learned through experiments. Then only it forwards the discussion to the virtual lab itself. Okay, so actually 2.2 is actually the physical lab, so meaning that that is the normal way of learning. But 2.3, it starting to go into the virtual lab. Okay, and finally in 2.4, on existing virtual lab learning applications in Malaysia. So you can see that it started from the domain area, and finally it zooms into what concerns the thesis uh, related to the title itself. Okay, the problem that this particular thesis or research trying to solve.